Our city endured an unbelievable tragedy yesterday. If there's a silver lining, it's that we didn't lose more lives.
There's no way we can turn the clock back. There's no way that we can reverse what has happened, but we can take this and do everything we can to make it better.
Question after question.
I don't understand what would motivate somebody just to go in a theater full of people, tear gas them and start shooting.
Yeah, and the person in front of me got shot, so it's like, how did it miss me, you know?
There's a small portion in the back of my mind that I was never going to see my kids again.
Painful answers.
It's a horrifying thing to see a bullet enter the brain.
We have head injuries to chest injuries to injuries to the arms and legs. Some of the injuries are going to be permanent.
I'm so thankful to be alive. I genuinely felt like it was my time.
We have tons of support here. Bomb experts are here with us. FBI, ATF, Aurora Fire Department.
One bomb defused.
It was an extremely dangerous environment.
Make no mistake, okay? This apartment was designed to kill whoever entered it.
The impact.
Got 7 down in the feet or not? 7 down!
Just beginning.
It's pretty surreal. I mean, you see someone 5 days ago and they're gone.
I still can't believe it happened. And I feel so sorry for the other families and all the other men and women that didn't make it.
"48 hours. Tragedy in Aurora."
And good evening, everyone. I'm Jeff Glor in Aurora, Colorado, just across from the multiplex where police today have completed their search of the scene of yesterday's massacre. 70 people in all were shot or injured, 12 of them fatally. Of the 58 injured, 7 are reported in critical condition tonight. President Obama is traveling to Aurora tomorrow to meet with victims and their families. Late this afternoon, police safely detonated all the explosives they had removed earlier in the day from the apartment of suspected gunman James Holmes. Holmes tonight is in solitary confinement for his own protection. He is due in court for the first time on Monday. The victims have filled area hospitals. Erin Moriarty begins our coverage.
It's now been almost 48 hours since James Holmes embarked on his diabolical rampage. But the life and death struggle is still going on inside the University of Colorado Hospital. Had you ever seen anything like this?
Not personally.
Neurosurgeon Alan Waziri rushed to the emergency room as the first of the injured arrived, crying, blood everywhere.
These are kids that had gone to a movie and now they're laying in an emergency room with a breathing tube and, multiple gunshot wounds.
If there is a silver lining, it's that most of the wounded are young and healthy, more likely to survive, and that they were just minutes away from this level 1 trauma center, and doctors determined to keep alive the most horrifically injured. Is it hard to believe a little bit, Pierce, that you're sitting here?
Yeah, I mean, it's a blessing and it's a miracle. And
28-year-old Pierce O'Farrell was sitting inside near the front of the theater when he saw a smoke canister go flying across the room.
I knew exactly what it was when I saw it, and it was like instantaneous. And then he emerged, and he was just completely covered in his armor and camouflage, and he just had a presence to him. I mean, he literally had this dark presence. He had a mask on, he had protective armor over his neck, he was wearing a gas mask, and then he had a helmet and just camouflage and black, so it was, I mean, you knew this man was, I just knew. I knew exactly what was about to happen. He was holding a shotgun, and I watched him fire the first 2 rounds. He fired them directly into the front row. And my first thought was to just get down, So my friend and I both just kind of grabbed and just hit the deck and just tried to lay as flat as possible. And as I'm laying there, I'm just praying. And you could hear the gunshots in the background, and you could hear them getting closer and closer.
And what is the sound?
It's a loud bang. I mean, he had started with a shotgun, and it just literally lit up the theater when he shot that first round. I mean, it's like a mini explosion, It lit up the theater, and that's when I hit the deck, and and you could just hear the shots getting closer and closer. I kept my eyes closed and just laid literally my face to the ground and, you know, in front of me. And he shot my friend first.
How did you know he shot your friend?
Because my friend said, "Pierce, I'm shot, Pierce, I'm shot." And he was kind of had his arm, he was kind of above me with his arm around me, you know.
And he's closest to the aisle.
Yeah, exactly. So he shoots him first. And literally as soon as he says, "Pierce, I'm shot," I got shot. I got hit in the foot with a buckshot. He shot me with the shotgun in the foot. So at that moment, I curled up and I said, "Carrie, I've been hit too, you know." And then right when I said that, he shot me a second time. And at the time, I didn't know where I'd been shot. I felt the impact, and I knew the pain just overwhelmed me. And he shot me right in the arm, and the bullet came through and just fractured my humerus bone. And thank God the bullet stopped there, because if it had continued through, it would have gotten into my chest, and then, you know, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you right now. I started bleeding a lot. I was essentially just laying in a pool of my own blood as it just poured out. And we just, with our eyes closed, just kept praying. And then eventually the shots stopped. And so Carrie peeked up first, and he said, "Okay, Pierce, we got to get out of here." The gunman had left. And so I mustered all the strength I had, and as I stood up, the pain was overwhelming. At that point, I thought I had been hit in at least the back, and maybe it went through into my chest. And and to be honest with you, I didn't know where I was hit, but I was in so much pain. My foot was killing me. And we stood up in the aisle, and we got to the stairs, and we went down the stairs. I mean, it wasn't many. It was probably 8 stairs total, because we were in the 3rd row. And as I got to the bottom, just all my strength left me. I just had no more strength. And I collapsed face first on the ground right in front of the final row of the lower section. And at that point, I thought I was dead. I thought I was going to die. So as I was laying there and Carrie had left, the gunman came back in, and I heard more shots being fired, and he was standing literally on top of me. His boot was no more than 6 inches from my head, and I could just feel his presence above me as he fired off a couple more rounds, which I'm pretty sure they were pistol rounds. And at that point, I thought there was no way. My thought process was he was going to just turn the gun on me and just finish what he had started, you know. So I laid there and I continued to pray, and eventually the gunman just left. I felt the presence leave me, and when I, you know, was pretty sure he was gone, I opened my eyes and I looked, and I was facing the stadium seating, and there was just people everywhere. There was bodies, there was people bleeding, still some people running around panicking, frantically dialing their cell phones. And at this point, it was just us. We were all alone in the theater. It was all the victims.
At this point, police entered the theater. They grabbed Pierce and took him outside, and he was rushed to the emergency room. Fortunately, his injuries were not life-threatening.
Then all my thoughts just went to those poor people. I knew there had to have been people that died in there.
So this has got to hit you. Like, here's somebody who came in, one of your peers, just slightly younger than you are, who wanted to take the lives of people his own age. How do you explain that?
I mean, there is evil in this world, and there is a darkness, and you could feel that from him when you saw him. It was a dark presence, and unfortunately the darkness is very real. You know, there is an enemy, but the wonderful news is that there's a light, and there's a light that shines brighter than the darkness can ever handle.
Pierce O'Farrell may be released from the hospital tomorrow. Incredibly, he doesn't seem to harbor any ill will towards James Holmes, the man who wanted to kill him.
This is going to be hard for a lot of people to understand, I think, but I feel sorry for him. When I think of that whole experience from his perspective, when I think what that soul must be like to have that much hatred and that much anger in his heart, what an everyday must be like. I mean, I can't imagine getting out of bed every morning and being filled with that rage and hatred and anger towards people that he undoubtedly has.
You're not angry with him?
I'm not angry with him, no. I'll pray for him.
An amazing young man. Very surprising. When he does go home, he will still have shrapnel in his chest, which means that Pierce will have a reminder for the rest of his life of what happened to him this week.
Amazing he can get home so quickly. Aaron, we know Pierce is so lucky. Others were not. What other kinds of injuries are doctors dealing with tonight?
Well, you talked about the 7 who are still in critical condition. We know that 2 of them have been shot directly in the face. One young man has already lost an eye. He's already been through 3 different operations, and he's in a medically induced coma. So it's still going to be a very long road till we know.
Aaron, thank you very much. A few miles from here, the apartment where shooting suspect James Holmes lived has become the second theater of this investigation. As Jim Axelrod tells us, authorities say it provides the proof that Holmes had booby-trapped the place in a manner that was highly sophisticated and deadly serious.
It's a good thing police broke through the windows of James Holmes' apartment and had a camera look around instead of trying the front door. That was booby-trapped with a tripwire designed to trigger an explosion if anyone walked in.
Once we got rid of that first booby trap, which was really a wire across the front door, we then had to neutralize a hyperbolic mixture, a form of an oxidizer, and some fuel that we saw immediately inside.
Investigators could see at least 30 shells the size of softballs, made mostly of rubber, and filled, they say, with gunpowder to create homemade grenades. By mid-morning, police disabled the wire and the first bomb attached to it.
Make no mistake, okay, this apartment was designed, I say, based on everything I've seen, to kill whoever entered it, okay? And who was most likely to enter that location after he planned and executed this horrific crime? It was going to be a police officer, okay? So make no mistake about it, what was going on there. And if you think we're angry, we sure as hell are angry.
An hour later, bomb squad members carefully placed a small explosive device of their own inside the apartment. It was a disruption device designed to disable another bomb in the apartment by emitting a shock wave and water. No other booms followed, which meant it worked, and investigators would be able to enter the apartment and collect evidence.
It went very, very well. The threat has not been completely eliminated. It has been significantly reduced.
This suspect was extremely devious in his construction, in his approach, his plotting, his planning. It was well thought out.
Kevin Barry is a retired New York City bomb squad veteran.
He is probably one of the most complex people that I have seen in my career.
Barry says the fact that Holmes was so smart made the crime scene much more dangerous.
Because he was brilliant, he could do the research that he needed. He could create the different types of fusing systems and electrical circuits that he wanted, and he wanted to set up to use as a killing machine.
And that killing machine was powered by a particularly dangerous liquid chemical explosive.
If it functioned as designed, that apartment would have lit up. The chemicals would have caused a fire. The improvised grenades would have heated up. They would have exploded in the course of the fire.
Since the shooting just after midnight Friday morning, this working-class neighborhood in North Aurora has been filled with bomb squad vehicles, fire trucks, and investigators, all focused on one 800-square-foot apartment in a cluster of tightly packed apartment buildings.
Didn't even know he lived there.
Caitlin Fonzie lives in the unit below Holmes. The night of the shooting, she heard loud music and went upstairs to ask him to turn it down. The door was slightly open, but at the last moment, she decided not to push in.
Knowing that something that was designed to kill you was right above your heads while you were sleeping, that's a little nerve-wracking, and it doesn't allow for very good sleep.
SWAT units asked Yesenia Lujan to use her apartment for surveillance, since her bedroom window looks right into Holmes' living room.
He was living right next door to you.
That's what's scary. That's what's really scary because we didn't know we never even seen him.
She, her husband, and their 4 kids hope to go back to their apartment tomorrow. Evacuated since Friday while the bomb squad did its work, Lujan was consumed with a chilling thought.
I told my husband, what if he woke up one of these days and just came out here and all our kids were just playing and he went ballistic on us out here?
This evening, the bomb squad was finishing the job at Holmes' apartment, transporting potentially explosive chemicals to a remote site and blowing them up. To hear investigators tell it, James Holmes was quite thorough wiring up his apartment. One source tells us he even booby-trapped his refrigerator. Now, all the hazardous materials is out of his apartment. It's all been removed, processed, and destroyed, meaning an FBI team can come in tomorrow and really begin to work over this apartment looking for evidence. Something else will happen tomorrow in all likelihood. Yesenia Lujan and Caitlin Fonzie and the dozens of others who live in and around James Holmes' apartment, they've all been out of their homes for the better part of the last 48 hours. Chances are they can go home tomorrow. Jeff?
So, Jim, what is the status of that apartment building tonight? Is it safe?
It is safe. FBI was very careful in looking around to make sure that when they come in tomorrow, that what they can concentrate on is actually collecting evidence. All their effort today was focusing on safety, making sure that when they come into the apartment that there was not going to be any kind of explosion, not only for the safety of the investigators and for the nearby residents, but also to preserve this crime scene. Tomorrow, the investigators begin to do the work of processing that crime scene and gathering evidence for the later court case.
Jim Axelrod, thank you. Stay with us for more on the investigation and the lives lost. Law enforcement is just starting to piece together what they believe is a trail of evidence that helps explain how the alleged gunman, James Holmes, plotted his assault on the theater, including how he built his arsenal. Bob Orr has the latest investigative finds.
Sources say investigators have found key evidence in dumpsters and trash bins outside of James Holmes' apartment, including a shipping label from an internet ammunition store called bulkammo.com. Sources say investigators have also recovered a surveillance video of Holmes picking up approximately 150 pounds of ammunition at a FedEx outlet in Colorado. They've also interviewed a UPS driver who says Holmes had 90 packages delivered to his school address on the University of Colorado Medical Campus. And sources say over the past several months, Holmes spent about $15,000 as he was putting together his deadly arsenal: guns, chemicals, explosives, and ammunition. Aurora Police Chief Dan Oates says much of the equipment used in the deadly assault was bought over the internet. Police are now working to develop a timeline of orders, purchases, and deliveries.
We've become aware that our suspect over the last 4 months had a high volume of deliveries, commercial deliveries of packages.
Chief Oates says the multiple purchases are evidence that Holmes didn't suddenly snap, but methodically planned the attack.
One of the things we are processing, as you might expect as law enforcement, is potential defenses. And what we're seeing here is evidence of, I think, some calculation and deliberations.
Investigators suspect Holmes accelerated his planning in late May, when he purchased the first of 4 guns found at the shooting scene. Between May 22nd and July 6th, Holmes legally purchased an assault rifle, 2 semi-automatic pistols, and a shotgun. And police say Holmes bought a staggering amount of ammunition. More than 3,000 rounds for the assault rifle, another 3,000 rounds for the Glock handguns, and 300 cartridges for the 12-gauge shotgun. The evidence also suggests Holmes was in a bit of a hurry. This receipt from TacticalGear.com shows on July 2nd, 2.5 weeks before the shootings, Holmes purchased a bulletproof vest and other equipment. He paid extra to have it shipped second-day air. While police are collecting a large volume of evidence connecting Holmes to the massacre, investigators are still stumped as to motive. Holmes, who's being held in solitary confinement, has refused to cooperate. And so far, there's nothing on social networking sites to explain the shootings. Investigators are interviewing former neighbors, classmates, and co-workers. But the best evidence relating to motive may come from the suspect's apartment. Authorities hope to recover computer files and other communications, so investigators took great pains to preserve the evidence as they dismantled the booby traps inside the apartment.
Now remember this, investigators don't actually need to establish a motive in order for prosecutors to go ahead and move forward with the case. After all, there are plenty of witnesses to the rampage at the theater, and Holmes was arrested with the weapons allegedly involved in the shootings. Still, having said that, police do want the answers. What warning signs were missed, if any? And what moved a quiet neuroscience grad to allegedly commit mass murder, Jeff? Bob, what happens immediately to all the evidence that's been collected? Well, a good part of the physical evidence, I'm thinking of the chemicals, what's left of the homemade devices, that will be taken to the FBI lab in Quantico here in Virginia for analysis. In addition, cyber experts want to take a hard look at any computers they might find, hard drives, files, thumb drives, and police, of course, also will be interested in any personal writings, journals, manifestos, notes, anything that Holmes might have saved along the way. And Bob, what are they looking for now? Well, specifically, they want to find anything that sheds some kind of light on his state of mind, especially over the last 4 months. Who did Holmes stay in touch with? How often was he in touch with them? Importantly, what websites did he visit? The bottom line is investigators are going to essentially try to map his behavior. They'll follow all of his communications and contacts out what they call the tree to see if all of that adds up to some kind of motive here. Bob Orr in Washington. Bob, thank you. The sheer extent of this community's wounds after the massacre are just starting to emerge. Barry Peterson tonight shares some of the personal stories of the heartache here and the stories of the heroes who gave their lives.
On his 27th birthday, Alex Sullivan had much to celebrate, his coming 1-year wedding anniversary. And from the Batman premiere, he tweeted, "Oh man, 1 hour till the movie, and it's going to be the best birthday ever." Then came the chaos. His desperate father, Tom, captured in this picture, hunted for word.
Call me! Find my son, call me!
Late last night, the worst news possible, Alex was dead. He was one of the victims remembered at this makeshift memorial. Also killed was Matt McQuinn, also 27. When the shooting started, he jumped on top of his girlfriend, Samantha Yaller, shielding her from the gunfire. She was shot in the leg, but his last wish was granted. She will live. John Blunk also gave his life for the one he loved, pushing girlfriend Jansen Young under a seat before he was shot. "I would not be here," she said, "if John had not been next to me in that movie theater." 18-year-old Alexander Bach's nickname was AJ. Friends told reporters they got the news Friday night at a grief counseling center.
I got on the ground, I grabbed my boyfriend, and we got on the ground, and we just held on to each other, just hearing all these people screaming and running, and it felt like it was coming closer, and just bullets everywhere. You heard the shells hit the ground.
What did you find out here tonight?
We lost a really good friend of the family.
He was friends with everybody. Everybody just knew AJ.
Jordan Crofter has known AJ since junior high school Little League and was sitting next to him at the movie.
This is somebody that you can't really replace, you know? Like, I don't know. After it happened, and I was the first one out of the movie theater, and I was sitting right next to him, so, I mean, that could have been me, you know? And, I don't know, it just sucks, because he just didn't deserve it. And for the killer to go in and do that, and everybody in that movie theater didn't deserve it, which just makes it that much worse. And that act of terror and just heartlessness, and to kill people with heart that, you know, wanted to live and wanted to make the most out of life, like AJ, it's sadder than you could even express in words.
A grieving father in this picture from the Denver Post heard the news a parent can barely contemplate. His 6-year-old daughter, Veronica, was confirmed among the dead today, the youngest victim. Her mother was shot twice and is in intensive care. Her aunt, Annie Dalton, and her daughter, Catherine, remember when Victoria visited 5 days ago and lit up the house.
She was an inspiration for all of us.
In what sense?
You know, because that positive attitude, that belief in life, you know, the belief in goodness, and just the hope of the spirit, you know, that resilient spirit.
Veronica was spending the summer learning how to swim, and she was very proud of herself.
You know, I just thought she was really pretty something special. Nobody could have told her that she couldn't do something.
Many families are still in shock. At some point, that gives way to grief. And then comes a lifetime struggle to accept what they have lost.
What sort of mind could be behind a tragedy of this scale? We'll explore that question when we come back. James Holmes, the 24-year-old suspect in the massacre here, has been described by some who knew him as intensely shy and brilliant. But what everyone wants to know about him now, and what Peter Van Zandt went looking for, is what might have motivated this killing spree.
The question is, why? That's what everyone asks whenever someone like James Egan Holmes lashes out against society in such an evil, violent way. But whether the setting is the campus of Virginia Tech, a high school named Columbine,
they started blowing up and shooting everyone in the cafeteria.
or a congresswoman's public appearance in Arizona,
a gunman shoots Arizona Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords and kills others at a public event.
the motive, experts say, is always the same.
How can I kill a lot of people? How can I do it in a shocking way where people will talk about me? My notoriety, my desire to be somebody can only be achieved by spectacular destruction.
Dr. Michael Wellner is a forensic psychiatrist who has interviewed 4 mass shooters. And while the public hopes these killers are simply crazy, Dr. Wellner says that in most cases, they are shockingly sane.
Here's the trajectory. A person starts with high expectations of themselves. They believe in their intellect. They believe in their skills.
But then comes a failure. In the case of Holmes, here was a brilliant aspiring scientist, unable to find work and forced to take a job at McDonald's.
Things don't work out for them. They blame other people. They don't have the capacity to introspect and say, gee, this is how I could get better. This is where I was responsible for what happened. It's other people's fault. That resentment graduates into a suspiciousness, maybe a paranoia. It grows and it swells.
Failure breeds resentment that former FBI profiler Mary Ellen O'Toole says in men can create a desire to destroy, to become the biggest story in the world through the barrel of a gun.
With these shooters, oftentimes getting attention, the notoriety, being on CBS, being on CNN, across the world, is really part of the motivation.
And if that's their goal, they nearly always succeed. Today, James Holmes' face is on the front page of newspapers everywhere. His name broadcast around the world.
Police say the Aurora shooting suspect, James Holmes, was carrying several guns.
My brother woke me up in the morning and said, hey, some guy just shot up a theater in Colorado for the Dark Knight. I was shocked, obviously. They're like, his name is James Holmes, and I was thinking, I know a guy named James Holmes, but it couldn't be him.
Sumit Shah went to school with a kid named James Holmes for 6 years.
I got another call, I was like, hey, he went to your high school, do you know this guy? I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it's the same guy.
The two were school buddies, but that's about it.
I never spent any time outside of school with him aside from working on our projects.
In talking to your old circle of friends, people who were in class with James Holmes, nobody seemed to have a relationship with him outside of school. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Nobody really had a relationship with him. I thought at the time he was just totally standardly normal. If anything, a little bit forgettable.
Forgettable to pretty much everyone.
Was he a ladies' man in school?
No, not particularly. I never saw him with any girls. He didn't really talk about any girls. I don't know if any girls really talked about him that much.
And Dr. Wellner says that fits the pattern of most mass shooters.
Sexual relationships. They're incompetent. Their dating history, their sexual history, it's a source of embarrassment to them. What replaces it for them is destructiveness.
Their reason for living becomes their plan to kill.
It's someone who is a loser, who is a reject, who is resentful, who suddenly found purpose. And so they become absorbed in it, they become passionate about it, so it becomes something that the mass shooter can mobilize around, and they do it with great vigor because they identify masculinity and themselves with destruction.
Destruction and a healthy dose of depravity.
I see mass shooters as perverts because it is a perversion to say that your quest for being relevant to others is more important than anyone's life. That's a perversion.
Violence and publicity, a sense of importance, a purpose. Holmes may have it now, although relatives of the victims, like Jordan Gowie, wish otherwise.
I don't want that gunman's name spoken. I want that to be the name that they remember. Is it Jessica Gowie or another victim's name? And remember what they stood for and what their life meant.
If anyone hopes that James Holmes is sitting in his jail cell tonight feeling great remorse for killing 12 and wounding 58 others, Mary Ellen O'Toole says, think again.
There's every possibility that he's sitting back and enjoying the attention and enjoying the notoriety that he's getting. He has stopped the world in its footsteps for today because people are so horrified. And that's an incredible sense of power and control, which may have been part of the motive as well.
When we return, harrowing and inspiring accounts of escape and survival. Stay with us.
48 hours, tragedy in Aurora will continue. "48 Hours, Tragedy in Aurora."
As you might expect, there are remarkable tales of survival unfolding here. John Blackstone has some of the most courageous.
At Gateway High in Aurora, members of the football team gathered today to support each other. They had gone as a group to the midnight movie that turned into a horror show. 17-year-old Zach Golditch was shot through the neck.
It sounded like a firecracker just went off in the back of my head, and I was like, man, what has happened? So I kind of fell over my friend's lap. And,
He'd gone to the late movie with the reluctant approval of his mother, Christine.
I was worried more about curfew than I was worried about somebody going into a theater and shooting my son, shooting children, not just my kid, but other people.
Zach wasn't even in the same theater as the gunman. The bullet came through the wall.
I leaned over on my armrest a little bit, and, who knows where it would have went. I'm just grateful to be here.
Christine was wakened by a phone call no mother wants to receive.
We raced to the hospital to get there because I'd never seen so much police and ambulances all over us. I came in to see him, and he was he was drenched in blood. I was just kind of blown away at what I had seen. This is my son, and it's not something you want to see your child go through.
You got to feel lucky.
Yeah, I definitely feel, just blessed that, I'm still here, and, I'm just trying to appreciate that. I'm still here.
There are many stories of near misses among the 58 wounded.
The wound was somewhere around here, and, just a few millimeters in or, centimeters in, and I don't think I would have left the theater.
Stephen Barton says the theater darkness was broken by a muzzle flash.
At the time, I thought it was still fireworks, and then I got hit here, and I realized it was, something much more serious.
basically this whole entire gash.
Joshua
right here,
Nolan, a Navy veteran, had a bullet ripped through his
spots.
leg and his arm.
I can feel my first couple fingers here, but I can't feel my last two. You know, I can sit here, barely move them, but I can't feel them. You know, there's no feeling on the side of the hand.
He was at the theater with two friends. When the shooting started, they hit the floor.
We basically just kind of huddled over the top of each other behind the seats and just sat there and just prayed and, you know, see how quickly this thing will go by.
Josh was there with his friend Brandon Axelrod and his wife.
Josh helped me protect my wife, and he got shot. So.
What did you feel? What's that like?
There's, well, it's definitely no type of a, you know, positive description when it comes to being shot. All it was after that was just pain and agony. You know, it's just like this white burning sensation in my body.
He was bleeding heavily.
There was a small portion in the back of my mind that I was never going to see my kids again. You know, and this was going to be it. And then, you know, the gunshots finally stopped, and we saw him, you know, kind of walking up and down the stairs, and he just started walking away.
Finally, police and medics began arriving.
So I picked myself up with my one good leg and my one arm, and I just wrapped my arm around the cop, and it's like, just get me out of this auditorium, just get me out of here.
There were not enough ambulances for all the wounded. Josh was taken to the hospital in a police cruiser. What was it like when you arrived at the hospital? Emergency room.
Once I started seeing the eyes and the faces of all the doctors and nurses, they were just astounded. Like, you know, you get trained for this sort of thing, but you pray and wish that you never had to be in that situation.
There's a lot of emotion tied up. You can't see these types of injuries and not have emotion. You just can't.
Bill Voss is an emergency room nurse at the Aurora Medical Center.
The majority of people had, of course, shotgun wounds. There were some who had been shot, obviously, by the AR-15s, the more high-powered weapons. There were deep wounds to the legs, arms, shotgun blasts to the chest.
Josh was going to be okay, but his family didn't yet know what had happened.
My oldest son woke up early in the morning. I got 5 o'clock and told me that I can't get a hold of Dad. I can't get a hold of him on his phone. I think there's something really wrong with him.
The extent of his injuries still isn't clear, but he's certain of one thing. He and his friends triumphed over a killer.
I beat you. I made it. You didn't take my life. You didn't take my friend's life either. But I pray, and I feel so sorry for the other families and all the other men and women that didn't make it. I just can't imagine someone's life being taken away like that.
We are learning more details tonight about the man accused of committing mass murder here in Aurora. Bill Whitaker is in the suspect's hometown of San Diego tonight. Bill?
Jeff, 2 days after the worst mass shootout in U.S. history, the alleged gunman, 24-year-old James Holmes, remains an enigma. He was raised here in this leafy suburb of North San Diego, where residents say the streets are safe, the schools are good, the families are close. And no one here remembers anything out of the ordinary about him. In fact, one neighbor says he was like the all-American kid. He mowed lawns, he washed cars. Everyone here says that it was just an ordinary kid. And now he's remembered as quiet and shy, but where he did stand out was academically. It was at school that young Jimmy Holmes first gained notice. In high school, he won a spot at an extremely competitive science boot camp and an internship studying neurobiology at the renowned Salk Institute in nearby La Jolla. At college at UC Riverside, he was an honor student in neuroscience, one of the most rigorous disciplines. Holmes spent one college summer working at this Los Angeles camp for underprivileged kids. He was a cabin counselor responsible for 10 young campers. Despite the playful poses, other counselors remember him as standoffish and reserved. Now, even such normal activities are under a pall. Our hearts and prayers go out to all the families and friends of those involved in this horrible tragedy, read a statement from Camp Max Strauss. When he returned home from college, next-door neighbor Anthony Mai says Holmes seemed to grow frustrated.
He had a bachelor's degree?
MS degree.
Or, in neuroscience, but he still worked at McDonald's, so that must have been a big bummer for him. But I knew there was something wrong with him, but it was just my assumption.
What do you mean?
Like, as much as he was, always smiling when I was around, the fact that he was quiet and, something just looked kind of weird.
In hindsight, high school classmates say behavior that seemed odd at the time now seems more troubling.
He was just a classmate of mine. I played 1 year of soccer with him our freshman year, and I believe I had like 3 or 4 classes with him. Really quiet kid. Didn't really say much even in the classroom. Had a few of his friends in the classroom, always just with them, not really with anybody else, didn't really socialize.
Daniel Haber says by senior year, Holmes, number 16 here on the soccer team, had stopped playing sports. He withdrew from school activities.
A couple kids that, I don't know, they tend to wear more of like the trench coat type ensembles and yeah, those kind of kids.
That it's easy to use.
Now, David Casper says he saw another side of James Holmes. The pawn shop owner says Holmes came in several times over the past year and looked at guns like the ones used in the Aurora massacre.
He did not buy anything. My recollection of him was actually very polite, very quiet. There was nothing out there that would have flagged him as any kind of threat prior to this incident.
But now, in the wake of this horror, his family home is under the media spotlight. Friends visited today. Packages were delivered, while James Holmes' mother remained inside, away from the glare.
Bill Whitaker from San Diego tonight. When we come back, parallels between fact and fiction in the tragedy in Aurora. After the horror of what happened at the Colorado multiplex behind me, Hollywood's major movie companies decided to hold off on announcing the usual weekend tally of box office receipts. Christian Bale, the star of the new Batman movie, said, quote, "Words cannot express the horror that I feel." Troy Roberts looks into the theory that the killer may have been acting out in the deadliest way possible.
I need a marked car behind the theater. Got a suspect in a gas mask.
Suspect, male, black outfit, believed to be wearing a vest, gas mask, and multiple long guns.
Looks like a deranged individual. He had his hair painted red. He said he was the Joker.
The massacre inside the Colorado theater played out like a horror movie. But the idea that James Holmes may have found some sort of misguided inspiration from Batman's most famous nemesis, the Joker.
Why so serious?
Is a detail that seems to resonate.
It's kind of disturbing, actually. There's a scene in the Dark Knight movie where the Joker's wearing a red wig in that hospital scene. So that's probably where he may have gotten it from.
Fans of the Batman series have noticed a number of striking parallels between the tragedy in Colorado and a classic Batman comic, The Dark Knight Returns, written in 1986. Here, an enraged gunman fires inside a crowded movie theater.
Oh God, that's actually kind of terrifying. Didn't you tell me today that he dyed his hair red and called himself the Joker?
Yeah.
I'm looking at that, and I'm only saying that because the guy in there, his hair is red. That is actually really, really unnerving.
People are trying to find a scapegoat. They're trying to find someone to blame.
Comic historian Christopher Irving has been collecting Batman comics since he was 4 years old and considers himself an expert on the series.
And I just don't think it's fair to say, oh, there's a panel in a comic back from 1986 that he may have read or may not have. We don't even know he was a comic book fan.
But there's another storyline in the series that's garnered attention. Here's the Joker. His target, the audience of a late-night talk show. In a packed theater, the Joker slaughters the entire audience by gassing them. Like the Joker, James Holmes also detonated canisters of gas in the theater. Irving says the comparison is unfair.
I think it's a really tragic coincidence. If he had really wanted to emulate that panel, he could have made poisonous gas. He had a science background. He could have made mustard gas, you know. I think trying to make that connection is tenuous at best.
Followers of the Batman series note that Bruce Wayne, Batman's alter ego, became a crime fighter after witnessing his parents' murder outside a movie theater. And Arkham City is a video game based on the Batman comic and is set outside the movie theater where Bruce Wayne's parents were killed.
You've got to realize there are thousands of Batman comics. I'm sure you could look at like 1,000 different comic books. You'll find instances, you know, that you could somehow impose what happened upon. Even if for some God help us reason, someone were to look at a comic and do that because of it, can you blame the comics? You really can't. I would not want to second guess or try and figure out the motivations behind someone who is clearly that mentally disturbed, that they would go into a movie theater and hurt and kill all of these innocent people.
We have witnessed tragedies and have tried to make connections or find explanations in the popular media before. At the Columbine school shooting, the killers wore all black, long trench coats. There was speculation that their inspiration, at least when it came to their wardrobes, owed a debt to the movie The Matrix. Then there's Jared Loughner, who killed 6 people, including a child, and tried to end Representative Gabrielle Giffords' life. The lone gunman was reportedly described by a friend as someone who emulated the Joker, just wanting chaos and to burn everything down.
Perhaps this is a man you don't fully understand either.
There's this clip from the 2008 Dark Knight that echoes the sentiment, when Bruce Wayne's trusted butler, Alfred, counsels him that sometimes evil acts just can't be explained.
Some men just want to watch the world burn.
It's natural to try to make sense out of tragedies that seem so senseless. And people have called what happened here another case of life imitating art. But the truth is probably much more complex. We may never know for certain, or for that matter even understand, what really went through the shooter's head the night he entered that theater.
As we leave you tonight from Aurora, Colorado, almost 2 days into this tragedy, Richard Schlesinger reflects on what happened as it's measured in years. Years cut short. I'm Jeff Glor. Good night.
They were 12 faces in the dark, 12 souls who would never again see the light of day. All of us can honor all of them by remembering how they lived. Though we don't know all their faces, we're learning about their lives, and the memorials have already begun. Veronica Moser was the youngest victim, just 6 years old. 4 days ago, she was bragging about learning to swim. Gordon Cowden was 51, the oldest victim killed. Jesse Childress was 29, a staff sergeant in the Air Force. In the middle of all the horror, there was also heroism. 3 men saved their girlfriends' lives by shielding them from the bullets. There was Jonathan Blunk. He was 26, worked in a hardware store. He pushed his friend to the floor, lay on top of her, and was shot to death. John Larimer was 27. He was in the Navy, joined last year. He was a petty officer and a cryptologist. He died shielding his girlfriend from the bullets. And Matt McQuinn was also 27 and also died trying to save his girlfriend's life. People get medals for that sort of thing in war zones. When Michaela Medic died, she had written she was still trying to get her life together while having fun. She was 23, worked in a sandwich shop. Her friends said they tried to carry her out of the theater, but they were told to leave her. One of the friends said they were told, "There's nothing you can do." Jessica Gowie was 24. She wanted to be a sports reporter, had just started her career. A.J. Boyk just graduated from high school. He was 18, wanted to be an art teacher. Rebecca Wingo was 32, the mother of 2 little girls. Alex Teves was 24. Last month, he earned a counseling degree from the University of Denver. And there was Alex Sullivan, whose death encompassed the kind of cruel irony only the most macabre amongst us imagine. He turned 27 yesterday and celebrated by going to the movies. His birthday was his dying day. Sullivan's father was photographed looking for his son and became a heart-rending symbol of the day. And if you do not remember how these people lived, Mr. Sullivan might well be the reason you'll never forget how they died.